Well, welcome to the program. While I'm giving some opening remarks, just wanted to share that in the chat box, you'll see Sarah Curtin, who is an intern for the Japan American Society this summer, has been asking some questions about favorite foods, favorite places to eat. So please feel free. Sorry, where are you joining from? What are your favorite Japanese foods? And what is your favorite taste? So those would be five tastes: sweet, salty, bitter, sour, or umami. And we'll be learning more about umami in a moment. So, great. So for those of you who do not know me, who have not seen me before, my name is Paul Pass. I'm the executive director of the Japan America Society of Dallas Fort Worth. And we're so glad to be here to be hosting this program. And if you're not familiar with the Japan America Society in Dallas Fort Worth, we are an organization that forges relationships between Japanese and Americans, between the US and Japan, through our public programming in business and policy, education, culture, international exchange. We do events like this focused on food. So we have a wide variety of programming. We'll be sharing some more information in the chat box as well, and sharing links to our website if you want to learn more about who we are. So we know that the past year has been challenging for many people on many different levels, and we just want to express our sincere gratitude for our audience, you, our members, anyone who else who is part of our organization. Thank you for your support. There are many different ways: financially, I guess emotionally, also through just attending our programs. That's very important. And we feel confident in the US that we are nearing a time soon when we can truly be post-COVID. We know it still is out there, but we are seeing a lot of great results throughout testing and the vaccination rates as well. So we wish you continued health, and we look forward to offering some in-person programs later this summer and even into the fall. We also hope that soon Japan will see higher vaccination rates, as we already have in the US. Next, if you have the ability to give, we would appreciate contributions to support our work and ongoing mission to connect Japanese and Americans. This program is offered for free, so we do appreciate any assistance that could be provided. And we'll share more information about that in the chat box. We have seen similar programs for about $10, if you're familiar with, or I guess closer to 1,000 yen. And that is, again, just as contributions. So, and also in order to boost our program, to best experience our program, please use the chat box that you have at the bottom of your screen. And that would be for comments and answering questions that Sarah shares. But if you actually have questions for our speakers, please share those in the Q&A box. So again, chat box for more comments. Even if you have technical difficulties, please let us know there as well. And we will address those audience questions after the full presentations are completed. So we hope that you have already eaten tonight, or perhaps dinner, or you've had some breakfast, because you are going to be hungry after seeing our presentations. So now I would like to introduce Maiko Kobayashi, who works for the Japan America Society as the accounting and office coordinator, but she's also presenting for us this evening or this morning in Japan. And she's a native of Hyogo Prefecture. And last year, she also presented our first Washoku program titled "You Are What You Eat, The Power of Washoku." So, Maiko, please feel free to begin.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. My name is Maiko Kobayashi, and I am a staff member of the Japan American Society of Dallas Fort Worth. For those who have participated in the previous Washoku event last year, it's good to see you again. And for those who joined for the first time, hello and welcome. So today, I will talk about the importance of healthy eating while exploring about Japanese food. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So let me share my screen first. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, there you go. All right. So with health and wellness trends on the rise, you have heard the phrase eating well or eating healthy more often than we used to. But have you ever thought what that means? Why is healthy eating so important? A common phrase you hear is "you are what you eat." The food you eat today affects your future health. So why eating healthy? Because it supports growth, development, and aging. And second, healthy eating reduces the risk of chronic diseases such as heart disease and diabetes. And lastly, healthy eating promotes overall health and well-being. And Japanese food, washoku, is among the world's healthiest foods. In fact, Japanese citizens have the longest lives compared to other countries. The average life expectancy in Japan is 85.3 years old, and the obesity rate in Japan is 4.3%, which is also the lowest among developed countries. The Japanese diet has something to do with that. Okay, so this is today's agenda. First, what is washoku? And second, I will explain about the three functions of food. And third, Ana San Gabriel of Ajinomoto will explain facts about umami. And lastly, I am going to talk about how you can improve your diet in the Japanese manner. Okay. So, what is washoku? As I said, washoku is Japanese food. Wa is the old name of Japan, while shoku means food. Washoku's wa also means harmony, so the word washoku not only means Japanese food. Washoku can be translated to harmony of food. And the traditional Japanese diet is a whole foods based and plant based diet. Since Japan has 4 regular seasons, Japanese value using seasonal ingredients. However, foods like rice, seafood, and soy are consumed in Japan throughout the year. And they are the 3 key ingredients in washoku. So now let's go over 3 functions of food: go, grow, and glow. Okay. First, the go function. Nutrients such as carbohydrates and fats are source of energy for our bodies. Second, the grow function. Proteins and minerals help our body grow bigger and stronger, building on our bones and muscles. And third, the glow function. Fiber and vitamins help regulate our body, keep our digestion system healthy, and strengthen our immune system. And these carbohydrates and fats and proteins, they are often called macronutrients, and these are the nutrients you use in the largest amount. On the other hand, minerals, fiber, vitamins, they are called micronutrients. Micronutrients are those nutrients that the body needs in smaller amounts. However, those are also important to healthy development, disease prevention, and well-being. So it's important to have both macronutrients, micronutrients in everyday meal. And key Japanese ingredients, rice, seafood, and soy, are perfect foods to satisfy these 3 functions. So let's take a look. First, Japanese rice. Japanese rice often refers to short to medium-sized grain, and it is rich in carbohydrates. So this is food of go. And second, second, seafood. And there are 2 types of seafood I'm going to talk about. First, fish. So fish are packed with protein, omega-3 fatty acids, which helps lower our risk of heart disease, and unsaturated fat. And unsaturated fat is often called the good fat. Unlike saturated fat, it is liquid in room temperature and relatively easy to digest. And seaweed is another seafood you find in many Japanese dishes, as well as high in the umami compound, which is today's main topic. And seaweed is the food of glow. It is rich in vitamins and fiber, and seaweed helps us regulate our cholesterol and digestion. And next, soybeans. And soybeans are the food that you want to eat more often because legumes are a good source of both macronutrients and micronutrients. And in fact, there are so many dishes and products that use soy in Japan, such as miso paste, soy sauce, and tofu. And according to the recent data, about 3,570,000 tons of soy are consumed in Japan. And today's main topic, umami, you can find in everyday foods, including these key Japanese ingredients. And today, I am honored to introduce Ana San Gabriel of Ajinomoto Japan. She's going to explain more about umami taste and its discovery. So Ana, please go ahead.
Okay, Paul.
Let me just say a quick few words, just as an introduction as well. So Ana San Gabriel is Associate General Manager, Science Group Global Communications Department at Ajinomoto, and a native of Barcelona, Spain. Ana has been aware of the importance of the diet since she was a child because her parents were always telling her how important it is to eat well for good health. She joined Ajinomoto in 1997, and currently she contributes to deliver the company's mission, Eat Well, Live Well, based on scientific evidence through webinars and conferences all over the world. Ana, please begin.
Thank you. So let me share my screen. Um, okay, good afternoon to everybody. And as Paul already introduced me, I don't need to really explain much about myself. I just wanted to thank the Japan American Society Dallas Fort Worth and especially Michael Kobayashi for inviting me to participate, and Paul for organizing all these webinars. So just very briefly, as Paul has mentioned, I graduated from the veterinary school in Barcelona, and then I went to Penn State where I specialized in nutrition, going to Tokyo University with a program of the European Union, and finally I entered at the Ajinomoto company to research on umami for 10 years. And after from research, I went to science communication in the current Department of Global Communications in Science Group. So this is to give you an idea about what we are going to talk about today. I will introduce briefly the company. We will see a little bit how the history and environment of Japan has defined the food culture, a little bit of the Buddhist monks cuisine, the discovery of umami, and also the Japan and umami connection, how to improve health with umami. And finally, I will give some comments about the trends of umami in the United States. So let me first let you know a little bit about the company. So for those of you who doesn't know Ajinomoto Group, the company started with the discovery of umami, which led to the world's first umami seasoning. That was 110 years ago, so a long time ago. To give you an idea, today we have 121 plants through Europe, Africa, Asia, Latin America, and North America. And more than 1,700 employees are working in research. We have 34,000 employees worldwide. And the company was born as a startup and has been committed to taste and wellness from the very beginning. And we will discuss more detail later with the discovery of umami. So by combining the function of amino acids, the Ajinomoto Group has been able to expand beyond food and seasonings, and we provide solutions to many different industries, not only the food industry with the taste and flavor products, but also in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries, with the pharmaceuticals and generative medicine, with the progress in this area. Also in cosmetics and toiletries. And finally, we also give supply raw materials for clinical nutrition, in this area, basically. But let's dive into the topic of today's presentation and learn about umami and its connection with Japan. According to the anthropologist of food Emiko Tierney Onuki, culture developed with the background of natural environment surrounding people. So culture is unique to the country. And food gives a sense of identity, and because it's perceived with the senses and enjoyed with feelings, there is an emotive dimension to dietary practices, as you can imagine. So the environment is key for food culture of a nation. Let's look at the geography of Japan to better understand Japanese cuisine. The Japanese archipelago, with 6,852 islands, runs widely from the subtropical Okinawa from the subarctic Hokkaido in the north to the subtropical Okinawa in the south, and is surrounded by sea. As a result, there is a great variety of climates that nurture a rich diversity of plants that will become food, and the convoluted coastline extending a total of 36,000 kilometers that provides habitats for many species of seaweed, as Kobayashi-san was telling us, as part of the diet, fish and shellfish. However, 75% of the national land is mountain areas, and it's covered mostly by forest. Under the monsoonal climate, the four seasons show distinct differences. So usually the Japanese cuisine uses seasonal foods, and there is a very high average annual precipitation. There is actually 1,800 millimeters, which is double of the global average. The rivers are short, and this is important because, from mountains to the sea, the rivers are really carrying very low amount of mineral content. It is said that it goes from 30 to 60 milligrams of calcium carbonate, which is really low compared to the hard waters that we are used to, mineral waters, like Evian has 300 for your reference, or Contrex has 1,500. So here you have, as Kobayashi-san already said, that the distinctive four-season moderate climate and abundant rain supports the harvest of large variety of agricultural products, the rice, vegetables, edible white plants, mushroom, and is surrounded by a very productive fishing grounds with an abundant variety of fish. So there is also a very abundant supply of fresh and clean water. And just happens that most of the ingredients that are used in Japanese cuisine are very high in water content themselves, like tofu or daikon radish, or even the steamed rice. That means that the Japanese diet has a very low caloric density because of the very high water content. But how the Japanese food as we know it today started? So let me refer a little bit to history. Japanese food and dietary habits have changed over the centuries. Early in the 7th century, with the establishment of Buddhism in Japan, beef and pork were excluded from the Japanese diet for religious reasons. So during 1,200 years until the beginning of the modern era, the state law prohibited people from eating animal meat, and this shaped Japanese culinary traditions in a significant way. So with the spread of Zen Buddhism that was introduced from China in the 13th century, Shojin Ryori, which is the traditional dining style of Buddhist monks, gained popularity. And you should know that this cuisine is made without meat, fish, or other animal products, and also abstains from the use of pungent flavors like garlic or onion. And despite the absence of animal products, the Japanese Buddhist cuisine is not bland. Have you ever had Shojin cuisine? You would love it. I really recommend you try. Every meal offers 5 tastes, which are drawn out naturally from the ingredients. So they have sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami was used to replace meat and obtain a similar meat effect of palatability and thickness. These are the main type of seasonings that are used for Shojin Ryori, like dashi stock that we will see later in more detail, soy sauce, sake, mirin, which is the sweet rice, made of sweet rice, miso, that is fermented bean paste, vinegar, sesame oil. But seasonings in soybean ryouri are used sparingly to draw out the true flavors of vegetables rather than masking the taste. And this situation changed completely with the Meiji Restoration. Japan abandoned its feudal system, the Tokugawa shogunate system, and the power to the emperor was reestablished. And as Japan opened the West to the Western modernization, a strong anti-Buddhism sentiment appeared, till the emperor lifted the ban of meat in 1871. And from that moment, Western foods began to enter the country, and the number of ingredients available, meats, vegetables, and other products that were brought in from all around the world increased. So this picture actually is a picture of the samurai from the Shimazu clan who were key to end the shogunate system. But the history of umami taste starts with Professor Kikunae Ikeda, whose family coincidentally belonged to the Satsuma Han. And the Japanese government sent him to study chemistry in Leipzig under the Nobel laureate Professor Wilhelm Oswald. Here you have a picture of Professor Ikeda with colleagues and the family of Dr. Wilhelm Oswald. And as you can see at the front row, everyone is sitting except Professor Ikeda, who had a very short stature. Professor Ikeda learned two important things in Germany. First one is that he became aware of the bigger complexion of Germans, obviously, who were taller than Japanese. And second, he experienced for the first time the taste of tomatoes and asparagus that reminded him of the taste of Japanese broth or dashi in yudofu, which is a traditional dish from Kyoto where he was born. And this is yudofu. So you can see it's a very simple and humble dish, but Ikeda felt that there was something in common in the complex taste of asparagus and tomatoes, cheese and meat with the dashi broth. And this particular taste that he was feeling had to be different from the classic four basic tastes: sweet, sour, salty, or bitter. To give you an idea about the Japanese dashi, in this slide you can see the key ingredients to prepare different styles of dashi. So all of them, they have dry bonito, dry seaweed, dry sardines, or dry shiitake. And all of them are dry for a long shelf life, require a lengthy process to produce them. But the key ingredient of the dashi is always the seaweed kombu. That is central for dashi when it's combined with other ingredients, dry bonito or dry shiitake or dry sardines. It gives a stronger taste. And then later we will understand why. So from his experience in Germany, Ikeda felt strongly motivated to improve the nutritional status of Japanese people. At that time, he read a paper from the Japanese medical doctor Hizu Miyake about food and digestion that indicated good taste promotes digestion. And he was sure that the Japanese dashi was a source of distilled and identified good taste that he also sensed in tomatoes, asparagus, and meats. So as a good chemist that he was, Ikeda used the Japanese dashi to identify the molecule, the particular taste that resulted to be the amino acid glutamate. And then he developed a process to industrially produce the first umami seasoning, monosodium glutamate. And for convenience, he coined the taste umami, which is close to the Japanese word umai, that means delicious, thinking that the name could later be changed. But today the word umami continues to be used and has the same meaning as brothy, savory, or meaty taste in English. And from this discovery, Professor Ikeda decided to produce a seasoning that would make nutritious foods more palatable and thus alleviate malnutrition among Japanese. And this is how the company Ajinomoto was born, from the industrial manufacturing process that Ikeda developed to produce glutamate. And the name of the company could be translated as the essence of taste. The company was created as an entrepreneurial project in the Meiji era by the innovation of Professor Kikunae Ikeda and the iodine merchant Sabroski Suzuki. And because of this invention, Professor Kikunae Ikeda is considered today one of the 10 inventors who led to the development of Japan at the beginning of the last century. Later on, it was found that there are other umami compounds besides glutamate, and these other molecules differ from amino acids known as ribonucleotides, inosinate, guanylate, and these compounds were also discovered in Japan. Inosinate from dry bonito, katsuobushi, it's called in Japanese, in 1913, and that was by Ikeda's student Shintaro Kodama. And guanylate from dry shiitake mushrooms in 1957, discovered by Akira Kuninaka, who also discovered one of the more striking properties of those two new molecules, which is that without having taste by themselves, inosinate and guanylate multiply the taste intensity of glutamate in a level never described for other tastes. So the final taste from the combination of glutamate from kombu and inosinate from the dry bonito is stronger than the sum. It has been described as a umami synergism. So therefore, the mixture of glutamate and inosinate or glutamate and guanylate end up giving a much stronger taste that when they are alone. And this is the reason that she presents an ideal umami sensation. The cooking time of the Japanese dish is very short compared to the Western soup stocks that we are used to do. It takes from 15 to 60 minutes just to extract the umami compounds from kelp and from seaweed and katsuobushi, and takes more than 1 year. However, it takes more than 1 year to make these components. It's a long process. And during the process, the umami compounds like glutamate and inosinate, they get concentrated, so they become very rich in umami compounds. And as you can see in the graph, Japanese dashi is characteristic because it's basically pure umami water, very rich in umami compounds. And this is probably why Japan has been connected to umami. In this illustration, you can see two things. The first one is that umami compounds are not only found in Japanese food, but as Ikeda realized, they are present in many foods consumed worldwide. And second is that meats and dried mushrooms have more than one umami compound. So all the foods enclosed in orange contain glutamate, but besides glutamate, meats and fishes are rich in inosinate, which are enclosed in green, whereas dried mushrooms are rich in guanylate that are enclosed in blue. And inosinate and guanylate may seem too difficult chemical names for you, but actually they are the kind of molecules that we need to make DNA or RNA, for example, and they are very essential for life. So they are very common molecules. And at this point, you might be wondering, so how can I recognize umami, right? And in comparison with other basic tastes, umami has very peculiar properties. By itself, it's subtle. First, it covers the whole tongue with a sensation that some describe as a tongue coating sensation, like a filament over the tongue. And second, it lasts longer than many other tastes, so we can feel it better when other tastes disappear. And third, it makes us salivate, even more than other tastes known for inducing the secretion of saliva, such as sour taste. In the graph, you can see that the amount of saliva secreted during 10 minutes by tested subjects. So you can see that it's a big difference with other tastes. You can experience these sensations by chewing, for example, a cherry tomato very slowly, 30 times. And I recommend you to write down the sensations over time, so you will become more conscious about the umami experience. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about umami and health. So we have been recently working on the use of umami seasoning, MSG, to reduce salt without compromising taste. Most of you know that excess of salt intake predisposes some individuals to high blood pressure and heart disease. Uh, High blood pressure is a risk factor for the development of heart disease and stroke. So, according to the WHO, cardiovascular disease is the first cause of death globally, and of course in the United States as well. So, to reduce the number of premature deaths worldwide, the WHO recommends that adults consume less than 5 grams. It's just like under a teaspoon of table salt per day. However, as you can see in the graph, Thailand, Japan, especially Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, and even also the United States, the consumption of salt is far above the amount recommended by the WHO. It actually doubles the recommended value. So the WHO thinks that by reducing significantly the consumption of salt, we will reduce the worldwide premature deaths due to cardiovascular disease. So it's an interesting uh, health approach to go through. But you may wonder, so how to reduce salt without affecting the taste of food, right? What is the relation between umami and salt reduction? Why can I suggest that umami seasoning can reduce salt intake? And to understand better, let's compare the table salt with MSG. As you can see in this illustration, the table salt contains sodium that is salty and chloride that has a mild metallic taste. And given the chemical composition, the total content of sodium in the table salt is at 39%, right? Let's go now to the umami seasoning, MSG. So MSG has glutamate that now you know it is umami. It has sodium that has tastes salty, and water that is neutral to taste. And in this case, the final content of sodium is only 12%. So MSG has 2/3 less sodium than table salt. So this is the first point. And in fact, we and other groups have been doing research showing that the replacement of part of the salt as shown in the drawing with a small amount of MSG, it reduces the final amount of sodium because MSG has 2/3 less of sodium, but also MSG can compensate for the lost flavor. So in other words, MSG maintains the good taste of a low salt dish because of the effect that umami has on balancing our taste and bringing up natural flavors of foods as Dashi does for the sojin ryori. Therefore, this combination can reduce the amount of sodium dramatically. And finally, let me talk about the growing interest of MSG and umami in the United States. So despite of being a familiar and widely used ingredient, there is a misperception about MSG that started from 1968 with an anecdotal account by a person after having a Chinese meal. And this continued when Asian foods were unknown to many Americans. The good news is that through education on facts, the number of people that became positive towards umami seasoning is growing. Right now, over the past 3 years, more than 12 million Americans have shifted their perception of the seasoning. And because of these properties to improve the flavor of certain foods, many registered dietitians are now promoting the use of MSG in plant-based cooking to help make better for you foods more flavorful, but with less sodium. And also to create a unique and tasty dishes, chefs and culinary influencers are also interested in umami taste broadly, and they are using it to cook as well. And finally, giving the consumers interest in cooking and different ethnic cuisines, especially during the COVID-19, the media covers more stories about history and the benefits of umami and MSG. And finally, um, there are very diverse culinary trends based on the unique applications of MSG, such as to improve the flavor of better for you foods like vegetables and whole grains, so they become more pleasant without too much salt, or different products from cuisines of other cultures, such as the chili crisp oil, or a new sauce started launched recently by Ajinomoto with a new Asian food startup called Omsom. MSG is also popular in fast food items, particularly goes very well with chicken dishes such as the new McDonald's chicken sandwiches. And interestingly, there are some unexpected places where MSG shows up, such as beer and hard seltzers, as well as desserts. And a company called Lunar is making seltzers with traditional Asian flavors, and one of their newest flavors is the pineapple cake, which is inspired by the Taiwanese pineapple cake that includes MSG. Very, very exotic, I guess. The desserts you see on the screen are vanilla MSG ice cream and miso cream caramel brownies. That sounds very exotic as well, very new. And well, thank you for your attention. This is all I wanted to present today, and I hope you have enjoyed. I'll be happy to answer questions at the end of Michael's follow-up presentation. So you have the stage.
Yes, thank you, Anna, for such an amazing presentation.
Okay.
Okay,
Then
yeah, I hope all the participants enjoy as well. Okay, so all right. So at the end of the presentation, today's program, I'd like to talk about how we can improve our diet in a Japanese manner with 5-color method. Okay, so let me share my screen again. Okay, just a moment. Okay, just hold on. Oops. Okay, there you go. Okay, so did you know? Okay, so I want to talk about American diet first. So did you know the average American diet consists about 70% processed food? Well, one of the biggest problems with the average American diet is that there are surprisingly large amounts of salt, sugar, and fat are hidden in processed food in order to extend their shelf life and enhance their flavor. By far, most of excess salt and sugar all comes from processed foods. And almost everything you find on the supermarket shelf has been packaged, canned, falls into the category of processed foods. And this includes things like breakfast cereal, granola bars, cookies, crackers, and sweetened drinks. In 2011, USDA published a nutrition guideline, My Plate, to support healthy eating for everyone. My Plate replaced the familiar food pyramid that had been used for 19 years at the time of its retirement. This My Plate graphic with 5 different food groups is a reminder of what and how much you should put on your plate to stay healthy. But still, following My Plate doesn't sound easy, right? This 5-color method will make your life easier. So this method is very simple. When you are making a plate, aim to represent the following 5 colors: red, yellow, white, green, and black. Nutrients come into balance without doing any complicated dietary calculations. For instance, red foods include foods like meats, like beef, fish like salmon and tuna, or vegetables like tomato and carrots. Yellow foods include soy, eggs, and corn. White foods, rice and other grain, onion and potato as well. All the green leaf veggies such as spinach, kale, broccoli are, you guessed it, green foods. And last, black foods include seaweed, mushroom, and blueberries, and so on. Again, you just need to pick some foods from each color group. This is the Washoku wisdom the Japanese have believed in for a long time. So, starting today, I'd love for you all to try using this 5-color method on your plate. In my plate diagram, fruits and vegetables take up a half of plate. So green salad and a little bit of blueberries or some kind of seaweed salad will cover green and black. And either fish or meat covers red and protein. And if you are vegetarian or if you are not vegetarian, maybe some kind of tofu dishes or corn will cover yellow. And as for carbohydrates, you can choose any grain, white rice, brown rice, or bread. It is your choice. And most importantly, please do not forget to have a glass of water. In my plate, they suggest to have dairy, such as milk, but I think we often forget how important water is in our diet. This may seem like a lot to remember, but don't overthink it. Try to make a rainbow on your plate as much as you can. Making small changes will bring you great success and future health to us over time. I hope you will try and enjoy cooking washoku sometimes at home. This is end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you so much, Maiko. And we appreciate both Maiko's and Anna's presentations and giving us more detail about Japanese food. And, truly this is washoku. This is Japanese food education. So now we'd like to go into the audience questions. We do have a few, but we encourage, if you still have questions while we are asking, please write those in the chat, or sorry, the Q&A box. That'll be the easiest way for us to see those. Within the chat box, you also can find some interesting recipes, information. Sarah has been writing some information, some details throughout our program. So you can find links to My Plate, as I mentioned, some healthy recipes and links to Ajinomoto and other organizations, other websites that you might want to see. So now I would like to introduce Sarah to come on. She's here on the screen, but let me just say a quick word about her. So she'll be running our moderator duties for the audience Q&A. And she joined the Japan American Society of Dallas-Fort Worth recently as an intern, and she'll be here this summer. She is currently an honor student at the University of Evansville in Indiana, and she is working on her bachelor's degrees in management, international studies. I believe there's one other that she's doing a triple major. So very intelligent. And Sarah, please come on the screen and join us and tell us the questions.
Of course. Thank you, Paul. Well, our first question comes from Anika, and I believe this is for you, Anna. And Anika asks, why was there such a big concern over MSG in the 1980s and 1990s? It sounds like MSG is actually very healthy and allows bland foods to seem more tasty. Are all the alleged health effects believed to be caused by MSG back then exaggerated, or was this connected to other factors?
Basically, I think it was a misunderstanding of the food culture to begin with, because MSG had a lot of sense in the context of the Japanese culture, the Japanese cuisine, whereas maybe in the United States, where all the fuss started, was something new and something that was not very well understood. So it was perceived more as a chemical than a taste or flavor itself. The whole story started with a letter to a scientific journal, but it was a letter to the editor where a person commented about all the symptoms he had having a Chinese restaurant meal, and after that it started. From then on, the editor made the title of the letter as the Chinese restaurant syndrome, and everybody started researching and looking into that, but in a very negative way. So it became something that was perceived negatively. However, in the US, you use soup cubes or use other sources of umami that for you seem to be fine, but they are actually also loaded with a lot of glutamate. If I summarize, actually, if anybody wants to have more information, you can go to the homepage called nomsg.com, and you will find a lot of resources that we have put together for. Maybe I can put it in the chat for everybody after I will put the link. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
The question.
And we have another question for you from Gary. Gary asks, can you comment more on why this important flavor ingredient was not discovered until the early 1900s and why the discovery was made by Japanese scientists?
I think it was that Japanese were in this moment of big changes, and the fact that they have been isolated for so long, and with this not using meat in their diets, and they were also very keen into learning science from abroad, from the Western countries, combined with the fact that they were very, the Japanese food is very noticeable umami. So it became easier for Japanese having all these soup stocks that are so rich in umami, and the fact that they were not using meats, that it became very clear for them, the taste. Whereas in the Western cuisine, we use we use oils and fats coming from animals, and a lot of very, very strong flavors that many times mask a little bit the taste of umami. So the point is that if you use too many condiments and too many ingredients, sometimes the umami flavor gets hidden, which it's still important, but gets hidden in a way that we cannot perceive it very consciously. I hope that answers you, Gary.
Thank you. And Rajit asks, is there a keto diet in Japanese food?
Oh yes, that's recently it's becoming very popular to have bentos without rice, so that the whole rice is changed by broccoli, things like that. So you can find now bentos without any rice at all. And I think Japanese are also catching on keto diets, but doctors are asking people to please be mindful and have a healthy and balanced diet. So it can have it has been reported in the media that can have very bad health consequences. So, but you can find it.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think I can add a little bit more. So I think in Japanese food,
Yes,
there
sure.
are several keto-friendly cuisines, such as yakitori. Yeah, it's a very low carb, and I think shabu shabu, something like that. Shabu shabu is like a sliced pork, boiled, how to say, like in a boiled water. I think, yeah, you can find several keto options in Japanese food.
Thank you. And we had another question that Anna, you answered a little bit in the text box already, but maybe you could tell everyone. The question was from Stuart, and Stuart asked, what is the relationship between MSG and side effects such as headaches, tight feelings in the face, ocular migraines, etc.?
Yeah, this is part of the whole process that we went through to verify the safetiness of MSG, and so many different organizations, scientific groups have tried to scientifically demonstrate these effects by doing a control study, blinded, and it was not possible to simulate all this, completely without bias, to show the effects of the MSG. So we don't have scientifically any evidence that MSG is causing all these effects. It's many times it's a personal perception, personal food culture issue. So it's much more complicated than that, I think.
Thank you. And we have another question from Scott. Scott asks, do you know of any predominant plant substitute or combination for bonito, particularly in dashi, in any type of Japanese cuisine?
Yes, of course. So the monks are using, instead of using the bonito, they are using the shiitake mushrooms. So you can do the same dashi with the shiitake mushrooms, and then you will have a completely vegan dashi. That's what the monks are doing. And actually, I think that guanylate from shiitake mushrooms probably has a stronger effect on umami.
Thank you. And Maiko, I actually have a question for you. I was kind of wondering, over time, the five-colored method has kind of changed from maybe the food pyramid to the plate method that you were showing. Is there a reason for this change? Was it just for visualization purposes, or was the pyramid maybe not as accurate as the plate may be? is there any information on that you have?
Yeah, so the reason why they developed the My Plate is because like all the food pyramid, it's a hard to see. Yeah, so it's like a more visualization purpose, and also the problem of food pyramid is hard to see. Like, and also they didn't really aware of those processed food and so on. So yeah, and then they've been using like a same nutrition guideline for the time long time. So yeah, that's what I heard. Like they had to develop the new one for like something easier for everyone to understand. Yeah, but this 5 color method is completely like it's something from like Japanese uh, food and nutrition idea. So I think I mean, I personally thought this 5 color method can apply to this, like can something related to 5 color, no, My Plate diagram in the US.
Perfect. And Stephanie asks, is there a substitute for seaweed? Perhaps maybe in the go, grow, glow method. Besides seaweed, is there something that is often used in Japanese cuisine?
It's a good question. In dashi, we usually use seaweed. Anna, do you actually know any other?
I would just go through, I mean, it will be just like the typical Chinese soup stock where you use chicken. You use onions, you use ginger and things like that. So in that case, you cannot use the typical dried ingredients, but the raw ingredients we use in Western cuisine or in Chinese cuisines, mixing vegetables and meats. So you can get exactly the same umami by doing that. It just takes longer.
Thank you. And I also have another question, just out of curiosity. Maiko and Anna, do you have a favorite taste? Sweet, salty, umami? What's yours?
I think I have sweet tongue, so I definitely go with sweet. But I also like, so I also like umami taste because dashi. Maybe I mentioned during my presentation, but that used in like so many dishes in Japan. So that something familiar with like my nature, how to say, my daily diet and so on. Yeah, that something reminds me of Japan and my family and so on. So yeah.
Oh, that's really good. I also have a sweet tooth, but I have to recognize that I am a fan of Japanese food, and I really enjoy almost any of the dishes in Japan. It's really a food experience to come here and eat the foods of the even local areas of the whole Japan. It has really high quality, very nice food, and I actually, if I could invite you all, it would be great. It's a good experience to have that.
Thank you. And we have another question regarding seaweed. Can you include different varieties of seaweed? And me adding to that, do different varieties of seaweed maybe have different properties?
I'm not specialized in seaweed, but I do know that the kombu, the kelp seaweed, is one of the ones that has the highest amount of umami, of glutamate. But there are other seaweeds that are used in different areas, like in Denmark, and that have been actually studied a lot because they are also good source of proteins, and they do have some umami, maybe not as much, but they have different flavors and different tastes that can be used for cuisines also.
Thank you. And if we have time for a few more, Scott asks a follow-up on dashi. Scott is allergic to most type of mushrooms. So are there any other types of plants that might be able to be used?
Oh,
Besides
I mean, you can
shiitake
use,
mushrooms?
yeah, you can use the meats and fishes. I mean, they do have, the katsuobushi or the dry sardines. So I don't know about kelp. I don't know if you have allergy against kelp. It's kind of, yeah. It's the best way to go is to go with meats and fish to get somehow umami flavor.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi.
And I think that is about it. So if there are any final questions, you
I
can.
see one here about portion size.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So Ayashi-san.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so about portion size, this is a great question because I know portion control is one thing we have to really consider. Like even though you how to say you cook your dishes low sodium, if you eat a lot of them, like more than you should, that's another problem will be. But in Japan, we recommend like a size of fist, like especially for rice. This is like a ideal amount of rice you should eat, but I think this apply for any side dishes. So yeah, and then another thing that might be useful portion control. Every time you how to say you place on the plate, you use plate, choose something smaller instead of like a bigger plate. If you grab a bigger plate, you tend to put more meat, more dishes. So I think using smaller plates help portion control as well. I hope this this answered the
That's
question.
a good strategy. I just wanted to add that the portion size in Japan is much smaller than in the US. That's for sure. Yeah, in Japan you use smaller plates and smaller portions. Yeah.
And Sarah, perhaps we can just ask one last question about it. There's one from Elaine on dried mushrooms and bonito.
Of course. Elaine says, I noticed that umami comes from dried mushrooms or bonito. Do raw mushrooms or raw fish have the glutamate?
Yeah. So raw mushrooms and raw fish has glutamate, but raw mushrooms don't have guanylate. Raw fish has inosinate. So it's a little bit difficult. Is that inosinate and guanylate are very favorable compounds, so are easy to be destroyed. So with dry foods, it's easier to keep them concentrated and stable.
Thank you. And one last question from Stuart. Is there an optimal pairing with umami? Sweet is balanced with sour, for example. So is there any balance with umami flavors?
Many chefs talk about sour, and the reason is because glutamate has a small buffering power. So I can tell you that there is, I'm not sure you are familiar with ceviche in Peru. They use a very sour lemon juice to seal the fish, and they eat it raw. But then they use MSG, and the reason why is because MSG not only gives the flavor of umami, but it also tones down a little bit the sourness of the lemon. So it goes very well with the sourness. People now are experimenting with sweet. I am not really convinced, but I think that it's just a matter of getting used to. For me, it's a little bit strange, but I think it's because maybe I was not, I don't have it in my mind to combine both. Yes.
Thank you so much, Ana. Thank you so much, Maiko.
And of course, I'm sorry, and salty, of course. I mean, saltiness is it's the best to go with umami. Sorry, I forgot about that.
And
Go ahead.
so thank you so much, Sarah, for moderating our Q&A portion of the program. Thank you, Maiko. Thank you, Ana, for your expertise, sharing this really great information, all the research that you've been able to do. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So at this time, we would like to showcase. Great. Thank you, Maiko. So we're going to share updates on some upcoming events. So first of all, we have a program now. These will most of these events will be really for people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So if you are elsewhere, we do have some online events, but the first one we're going to mention, the first one is an Olympic Day to celebrate the upcoming Olympic Games, and this is going to be in Irving. There'll be festivities. There'll be sports. So please look at our website for more information. And this will take place in just a few weeks, June 25th to 26th. And then on Tuesday, June 29th, we have a program with Japan Society. I'll talk about the sake tasting in a moment. On June 29th, this will be a program with Japan Society focusing on figure skating, which is not a summer sport, but we will have a conversation on sports. And coming up on July 16th, this is the return of our sake program. So this is an online event, so anyone can partake in this. There will be delivered sake. So it will be delivered to your home. That really focuses on people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But this will be, again, return of that very popular program, Friday, July 16th. And next program, next slide. Great. Coming up on Wednesday, August 4th is another return of a popular program. This will be our Japan-America Friendship Night. And this is where we work with the Texas Rangers. We'll be at a game where Shohei Ohtani, who is the very popular Japanese baseball player, he will hopefully be playing that night. It'll be the Texas Rangers versus the Los Angeles Angels, so we do expect to see him. And there's more information on our website. I think you can see on the slide, but the tickets are in what's called the Batter's Eye section. This is at Globe Life Field. This is a almost brand new stadium in Texas, and that $60 amount does include $25 of what's called loaded value. So you can use that for concessions, for food. You can also use it even for merchandise in the gift shop. So we hope that we see you there. And I believe that's all we have for the slides. But you can definitely, I think that's all we have. Correct, Michael? I think that's all we have. Yeah. So please go to jasdfw.org for more information about all of our programs. We have a lot of exciting upcoming events. We're starting to schedule also several programs into fall of 2021. And as we finish for today's program, again, thank you for everyone for attending. Thank you for our speakers for your time and your dedication to this program. And then there will be a survey that will pop up once this program ends that will come up in your browser. We do appreciate if you could respond to that so we can get more information about how to make these events even better. And thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening for everyone in the US and a wonderful morning for those of you in Japan. Thank you so much.